Jaws is a great movie, but I have a question. When does it actually start being a great movie? I mean, what is the precise moment where it goes from being an entertaining but otherwise ordinary horror movie to being one of the more beloved movies ever made? For many, I would guess the answer might be right around here. In the very first scene, when a shark, the titular shark, brutally attacks Chrissy Watkins on a midnight swim. It's a striking way to begin the film, and a great way to signal to the audience that whatever else the movie might be, it's gonna deliver on the promises made in all the marketing. Some titillation, some shocking scares, a real crowd pleaser. But for me, that's not the moment when the movie becomes great. That precise moment is about a minute later. Here, as Chief Brody looks out the window of his beachside home. So, what's so great about this? I got a couple reasons, each one hopefully a little bit more convincing than the last. The first is that the shot establishes a sense of perspective that will structure pretty much the rest of the film to come. Spielberg will use this same over-the-shoulder shot of Brody again and again, each time to help the audience experience moments alongside the character. And it's not the only way Spielberg does this. The movie is a clinic in maintaining perspective. Want to make it really clear whose shoes we're in as an audience? Show your primary character looking at something, and then cut to that thing, and then cut back to the character looking. Keep doing this, and it won't take long before the audience gets the idea. We're seeing things through that character's eyes. Want to go a step further? As an editor, you can keep a close eye on where your characters are looking. When your primary character looks somewhere, cut on that look, and the audience will get the picture even more. Lastly, think carefully from a storytelling perspective about where your character is devoting their attention. Is it something they care about? Something that motivates them? Something that will drive the story forward? Brody isn't just looking out at the ocean. He's looking at his future, the space where all his troubles will come to a head. Alright, so it's an effective shot for thematic reasons, and it puts you in Brody's shoes. But what does that matter? Why is Brody someone worth sticking with in the first place? Well, Brody is for me one of the key reasons why Jaws is a great film. But my reasons are inevitably subjective and probably won't line up with yours. That's okay. I like Brody, but I also find him convincing. He's not your typical blockbuster hero. He's a little clumsy. He's a little dorky. He's the kind of guy who gets a pep in his step when he thinks he finally might be making a big difference as a small-town cop.
But in Amity, one man can make a difference.
That's not to say Brody doesn't have some heroic moments, or that he's clumsy as chief of police. But what I like most about Brody is that he seems so ordinary, and that his greatest skill as chief of police is probably the one he needs the most.
Hey, glasses,
Yeah, glasses.
His sense of diplomacy. Brody is a man who is constantly trying to reason with and calm down the people around him, people who are making demands on him.
I didn't agree to that.
Or trying, sometimes successfully, to intimidate him.
Well, what other authority do I need?
He has to learn to be more assertive, and he does, with the help of a friend.
Please, help me get those guys out of the boat, will you, please?
Which is another thing I like about Brody. He grows in small but significant ways, thanks in part to the introduction of Hooper in the story. Hooper's a man who's much more assured than Brody. He's rich, to be sure.
You rich?
Yeah.
But he's also a confident expert in his field and someone who's not afraid to make demands.
Keys are intact. Do not smoke in here. Thank you very much.
Hooper's also not a diplomat. He's not so even-tempered as Brody. But he pushes Brody in good ways, and Brody seems to learn from him.
Shoot up in the surf.
In 1 week.
Tell him about the swimmers.
Fighting for what he believes more and more until he finally decides to take control.
I can do anything. I'm the chief of police.
But Brody doesn't grow just because of Hooper. He also grows because he makes an effort to learn. He realizes his limitations, listens to people who know more than him, and lets their expertise guide his decisions. He acknowledges that he's not perfect, and when he makes a mistake, he owns up to it and changes his behavior.
I'm sorry, Martin. She's wrong.
No, she's not.
These things make Brody likable, but they also make him believable, because he doesn't change overnight or become an entirely new person. Even after he starts to assert himself, he's still got moments where he seems a bit lame.
Yeah, but I'm not drunk enough to go out in the boat.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Can't do that.
Yes, you can.
This isn't a zero to hero story. It's more like a 5 to still alive story. A story about a man setting aside his ego.
That's why you're going to sign this, and we're going to pay that guy what he wants.
And that makes the resulting moments of terror all the more compelling. That sense of perspective keeps going in the second half of Jaws, which resets the story in a few ways. Having taken charge, Brody sets out on the ocean with Hooper and Quint, where new challenges await. Spielberg keeps using those over-the-shoulder shots. Brody keeps learning new skills and new ways of thinking, and he keeps trying to play the diplomat.
You're not going to do this aboard the ship, are you, Mr. Quinn?
But the second half of Jaws belongs as much to a new relationship between Quint and Hooper as it does to Brody. In a span of about 30 minutes, Quint and Hooper go from hating each other's guts to respecting each other's skills, and finally working as a team. It's a clash of big personalities, and because we're comfortably in Brody's shoes, we feel like we're watching their relationship unfold through his eyes. Everyone loves to talk about Quint's famous monologue about the USS Indianapolis, and it's Quint's moment, no doubt, but notice how often Spielberg and his editor Verna Fields cut to Brody's reaction and when. As the monologue starts, it's important to the tone of the scene that Brody's still catching up to the fact that what he's about to hear will be devastating.
What happened?
As soon as that information becomes clear,
But our bomb mission had been so secret. No distress signal had been sent.
we see it reflected in Brody's face. It's Quint's story, but it's a story for Brody, a man who's only beginning to understand Quint's hatred for sharks. And even though Hooper loves sharks,
Yeah, I love them. I love them.
it's also a story that changes how Hooper feels about the man he's been bickering with the whole trip. By the end of the movie, Brody is a changed man, but it's not so important, I think, that he confronts his fear of the ocean or learns to tie a knot. What matters is that we've been along for the ride, and that in sharing his experiences, we feel like we've been through something too. And it all starts here.